Okay, hi everybody. Hands up who watched the Great British Bake Off? Anyone? Okay, I'm like the Mel and Sue of the Great British Bake Off because I'm the Director of Communications, so I know a little bit about a lot about the company, but anything in depth, like my learned professors and doctor colleagues around here, please don't ask me any detailed questions. But what I can do is take you on a little bit of a journey about, from the world's largest medical technology company, how we approach innovation, what some of the trends are that we're seeing as a medtech company. So I suppose we come out from particular disease states and products into sort of that bigger picture thing. So how we're going to do that? Firstly, every company who's worth anything says they're involved in innovation. To prove this point, I looked up SodaStream, and even SodaStream has press releases about how innovative they are. So everybody talks about innovation, but actually what does innovation mean? Is it just a buzzword, or how does it translate into what companies do? A bit of history, and not just a history lesson in terms of Medtronic, but actually this is how innovation in medical devices comes through versus maybe pharmaceuticals, which is a lot of sort of desk-based research, researchers in companies and in institutions working behind closed doors. Most medical technology innovations come through a collaboration with a health professional, a physician or a doctor, and the engineer that can put it together. And that's where Medtronic came from. So Earl Bakken, who's now stinking rich and lives in Hawaii, has a collection of Hawaiian shirts that have devices sewn into them in terms of the pattern and stuff like that. He was a great electrical engineer. He worked in a Minneapolis hospital fixing some of the machinery. The challenge in the 1950s in Minneapolis was power cuts led to patients who were plugged into generators on the mains for the pacing of their heart. A power cut came along, and unless that plug was on the emergency socket, they didn't get pacing for their heart. So Walt Lillehei, a cardiologist at the hospital, said to Earl Bakken, hey, you're good with your hands, come up with a battery-operated pacemaker. We need it. People are dying without it. The story goes that Earl Bakken, who's over there on the right, went to his electronics magazine, pulled down a simple metronome, as in a musical metronome circuit, and he used that to create the first ever battery-operated pacemaker. So that was where that device came, and Medtronic from then has grown into a company of this size, with 7,500 engineers and scientists working on innovation. But the key point is it's the partnership between the health professionals and our engineers that bring these technologies and devices through to fruition. And how does that happen? So I just wanted to sort of talk about how this innovation process goes. And I suppose from personal experience, we have a customer innovation centre in Galway where our chair operates and probably knows it very well. There's two really interesting things I find when I go there. One is about the speed, the increase in time, the decrease in time it's taken to actually develop prototypes for new devices and stuff. And can anybody think about what is the biggest factor that's reduced that time? Any ideas? 3D printing. It used to be that a physician would come and sit down with our scientists, talk about a new design of something, even if it's a delivery of a particular device. And then that design would need to be sent away to someone in the States, who would then, in a very big machine using all sorts of plastics and stuff, come up with a prototype, send it back. 2 months later, they'd sit down and go, no, that's not what I meant. That screw's not quite where I meant it to be. Now you can sit down, together design what you want, overnight it prints, and the next day you can be testing that device. It's sped up our innovation, not just in the products itself, but the delivery of it much quicker, and that's how innovations are expanding. We're using technology to help bring technology along. The other really interesting thing about it is about you can come up with a great invention, but can you scale it? So in our innovation centre, we have a whole fake manufacturing floor. And that fake manufacturing floor is to actually test and see whether you can mass produce these technologies. Because there is no point coming up with a great technology that cannot be produced at the right time and with the right quality, and also for the right price and the right value. That doesn't mean we still don't make things that have human interaction. Our heart valves still are sewn by hand because the tissue is so delicate that we need that human interaction to sew these technologies together. But we need a production line that then allows us to test the quality of that to a rigorous standard. So we don't want to make one-offs, we want to be able to make mass-produced things with the right quality. So that's sort of two approaches to innovation, but it's still rooted in this. Health professional has the idea and knows what they need to see, and it's our engineers that make it happen. That's the 3D printed shoes. We don't do that, but I'm sure somebody sneaks in at night and maybe prints themselves some shoes. I put this up here because we often get asked, and I go to similar sort of events like this, and some people say, I've got a brilliant idea for a medical device. And I say, that's great, I'm one of 85,000 people, don't give it to me because it will get lost. But if you do have a great idea for an innovation device, Medtronic Eureka is a way that we work with clinicians that we don't know very well, who maybe have an idea, want to work with somebody to make it happen, but also want that protection in terms of patent protection, in terms of copyright protection, things like that. So if you have a brilliant idea, that's the people to talk to. Don't give it to me because I wouldn't know where to put it. Okay, so what do we do about innovation? First thing is innovation in product. This is the lifeblood. This is what we've been doing for 60 years. It's around product innovation. I'm fiddling with this thing here because that wasn't my hand using the picture, but that is the latest pacemaker. So the original pacemaker was about this big, outside, battery operated, quite heavy. This is a leadless pacemaker. It doesn't sit with leads. It goes in through the femoral artery and it's positioned inside the heart. And these two little, there's four little sort of wires here. As long as two of them are connected to the inside wall of the heart, it will pace the heart. That is the latest technology in the pacemaker, which has been around for 50 years. So we make innovation in product and all sorts of products for all sorts of the parts of the body. I've always wanted to do this in my little comms role, is come up with the Medtronic operation game, which has got different devices. Instead of pulling the thing out and not touching it, you're putting the thing in and not touching it as we go through. But nobody's taken me up on the idea so far. And then often when I say we do something for every part of the body, then some wise person in the audience goes, tell me about the penis. Well, I go, that's brilliant. Now I can talk about the dick stent. We even are doing some research as in terms of having our stenting technology to increase the vascular flow around the penis for erectile dysfunction. I've not been able to put that into the newspapers, even though I thought it was a brilliant thing because it's early trials and I don't know what the results are and all that sort of stuff. But, in terms of bodies and technology, there's an important message in that, is that our innovations that we started within the heart, we now take to other parts of the body. So the electrical pulses that are used to keep the heart beating, we use that similar technology to do deep brain stimulation. If you've ever seen deep brain stimulation in action, Parkinson's disease, people with the movements and the shakes with Parkinson's disease, you can put a pacemaker essentially positioned here. A 6-hour operation puts 2 electrodes into the perfect position they need to be. It's sort of neurosurgeons are doing this stuff under MRI scans and CT scans and rest. But you get these things in the right place, you turn on the electricity, and a Parkinson's patient who literally couldn't hold this glass and would be shaking like this will be able to do that. The electricity turns off that part of the brain. So the pacing that we have, the innovation that we have, we then try and look for other uses of those. Stents that are used in the heart, we know in the peripheral area to reduce peripheral artery disease and all the rest of the stuff. So it's about what innovation can be expanded and used in different areas. Okay, so that's product. We also look and do innovation in how we do business, because if we just keep producing products, then we just become like a supplier. What we want to do is be a partner in NHS systems, and particularly as we have a growing population, growing need of medical technology, the longer we keep people alive with things like this, the more support and hospital care they're going to need. We can't just keep producing things that keep people living if we're not actually figuring out of an equitable and valuable way to do that. So one of the things we are doing is actually Imperial College NHS Trust. We run their cath labs for them. So we do the purchasing of the equipment, the maintenance of the equipment, we pay for the facilities and things like that, and we leave the clinical team to do what they're best at, which is look after the patients, and we worry about all the admin of it. And by having a long-term partnership with them, we can then look at ways of using our best medical technology, the stuff that's remotely monitored and that can reduce long-term complications and outcomes. They get a good price for that, and then we can work with them in partnership to increase the number of patients they can treat, to better follow those patients up and to make the most of the hospital resources. And we do that as a risk share. So if we don't help them to treat more patients for the same budget that they have, then we pay for that. So it's a way of us putting skin in the game and being involved. So there's innovation in business models and things. And then also innovation in how we do things. So we're a big company. The way we've become bigger and bigger is by buying other companies. It used to be that predominantly we would go and find a great medical device company that come up with a good widget and buy that and market that. What we now are also looking at is good innovative models of care. So over in the Netherlands, there's the Diabetes Clinic, which we bought last year. It's a clinic for young people with diabetes. It's not done in a hospital, it's run in a sort of Google-style type open plan office area where young people come, they have all their appointments in one go, they sit down, their chats, they learn about their condition, they learn how to take control of it, they learn about their data. We're interested because medical devices, our insulin pump is part of that pathway, but only one part of it. But we see that as a service, an end-to-end care, a patient pathway. So we've invested in that company. We want to see that roll out. There are 5 clinics now in the Netherlands that are doing this, and we're looking hopefully to get one established in the UK and in other countries, because this is a new model of care. So yes, it's devices, yes, it's rooted in innovation, but it's also innovation in how we deliver the care that we can do. So that's what we say when we talk about innovation. It's not just products, it's about the stuff that goes around it. So the thing I want to finish on is sort of future and future trends, because that's what we're often asked about. Where are devices going and what will it look like and all the rest of that? So I want to just go back to the future before I conclude. 3 things. The first is data. These little pieces of technology hold so much data. If our ICDs will record every beat of the heart, every murmur of the heart, every pause in the heart, and there are about 90,000 a year implanted in the UK alone. So that's 90,000 patients with, well, is it something like 100,000 beats a day or something a heart does? That's a lot of data that you can draw on. So in terms of sort of research and using the right, data privacy and protection and anonymity and all the right things in place, there's this whole wealth of data. If you want to find, I was thinking about this on the train, how would I talk about it? If you wanted to find out what 70-year-old American men thought of, and if their heart skipped a beat when Beyonce came on at halftime in the NFL Super Bowl, then there's no reason we couldn't pull that data out of all the US men, the 70-year-old walking around with ICDs in, and just say, at that moment, was there ever a flutter or a click in the heart? Probably wouldn't find one, but you never know. But if you wanted to do that, you could. And I suppose that's the thing. These devices record and bring so much data in that actually, in theory, there's a lot more research that we can dig in. I mean, that's the thing about big data. It's like the data's there, how do you use it? So rather than macro, what about micro? What about using individual data to help you as an individual control and look after your care? That's the second thing, closing the loop. So insulin pump technology, the holy grail is to get to a closed loop system with insulin pump where the user doesn't have to do anything, where the pump delivers the insulin and the sensing technology is good enough to basically mimic what the pancreas would do, to figure out how much insulin is needed in the body to combat the food that you've just consumed and the exercise that you just did or you didn't do, and close that loop. We're not there yet. We will get there. The diabetes community will get there. But for now, the data that's contained within the device and continuous glucose monitoring that basically monitors your blood glucose levels and tells your device what's going on means you can actually look and see your trends in the day. And you might know that at 3 o'clock you have a slump, so that's when you should have a snack. You do finger prick testing. This is a great analogy someone told me. It's like you plot 3 points on the graph and you look at it and you go, oh, I'm brilliant at 9 o'clock, I'm brilliant at 12 o'clock, and my levels are great at 6 o'clock. In between those times, you could have been on a roller coaster of blood glucose levels that impacts on your long-term cardiovascular health and renal health and the rest of it, but also you could get dangerously low and go into a hypo. So what the technology allows, the data that you get from your insulin pump allows you to look and see those trends. And do people, some people want to really be involved in their health, some people want to be less so, but the data at a personal level can really help you. Same with what's in your heart devices. We often get requests saying, dear Medtronic, I want to know what my heart device has been doing today. And it's like, well, I suppose technically we can give that to you. There's a lot of legal things we have to go through, but also, what are you going to use it for? So in certain areas, like diabetes and things like that, we encourage people to use that data because it can help them take better control of their health. And finally, miniaturization. So miniaturization, getting a pacemaker this size is great, but why are we doing it? And the great thing was that somebody showed me a graphic when I started at Medtronic that shows about the size of our ICDs. So these are the devices that kickstart your heart if you're having a sudden cardiac arrest. They showed the size of the IDs. They come down, they come down, they come down, and they got quite small. And then they started getting bigger again. And I'm like, hang on a minute, why are they getting bigger again? And it's like, we realised that there wasn't any point just making them smaller. We actually wanted to make them do more. So the reason they're bigger is they need more battery life in them. We want them to recharge quicker and to fire quicker. So it's like, okay, so we made them bigger. We also want them to do more. We want them to have algorithms that allow the heart to try and kickstart the heart without giving it an electric shock. So we need the space for that technology to allow that to happen, rather than just say we're going to get smaller for the sake of it. But the beauty of getting smaller is that we can treat more patients. So the heart valve I showed just a few slides back, this one here, this is an aortic valve. If you need an aortic valve repair, probably up to about the age of 70, 75, they would consider doing the procedure on you. Anything older than that, they won't do the procedure, because the procedure itself and the recovery will probably cause the mortality, will probably kill the patient. So what you're saying to a 75, 80-year-old is that, I know your heart's failing, I know your valve's about to kick out, but there's nothing we can do for you. We can give you drug treatment, but we can't replace it. With this device, you can go in through the femoral artery and you can pop that valve into the right place, and that patient can go home 2, 3, 4 days later, as opposed to a 6-week recovery period after you've cracked their ribs open and cut themselves open and stuff. And those patients will go from being stuck in a chair, unable to move, just basically waiting for death to creep up, to actually going out and walking and playing with their grandchildren, which is great. You know, we're giving people that life left because we've been able to miniaturize and figure out new ways of delivering this stuff. That raises another challenge. That person at 75 now hits 85, and they're still out there and doing that, and their valve's replacing again. So guess what we've done? We've managed to miniaturize the valve even more, so that we can actually do a valve-in-valve procedure, which then can pop another valve inside that one. Don't ask me what happens after the third valve, but people are working on it. But the beauty of miniaturization means that we can get into places, we can use the vascular highway to get to places and actually deliver treatment that we couldn't deliver before. So if you're talking about trends in everything that we do, I think data is important, closing the loop is important, but actually finding ways to deliver therapies to new parts. And I love to talk about the microbeads and things like that. It's, you know, exactly that. It's like technology can help us deliver our drugs, but also deliver therapy to where it's needed and help us to live healthier and happier lives. So thank you.